guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 61, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, bro?
Doing pretty good, man. Going a little stir crazy being in the house, but happy to be back with you, talking about some potential MMA fights. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm so glad to be back. Guys, we're so glad to be back. Apologies for the late break here. Long story short, 2 weeks ago, we did episode 61, part 1, and that was a lead up to 249. 1 hour before we were going to drop the episode on Wednesday. What happened? 249 got canceled. It's now back up, 249 2.0. Fight Geek, what do you think? Should we one day release a episode 60.5, episode 60 and a half, that secret episode? Should we do that?
I don't know. I think we should just keep it moving.
Okay, all right.
It's not relevant anymore. Everything's been changed so much since last week. Sorry that episode never made its way out, but I don't think you missed anything because none of that's actually happening.
I think it'll be interesting to release. Okay, one day. But anyways, moving on. So here's what we've got on tap today, guys, on episode 61. First of all, we've got our opening question for Fight Geek. After that, thoughts on the new and improved, UFC 249 2.0, scheduled for May 9th in Florida. And after that, my favorite section, listener questions and more. So, Fight Geek, let me start off with this question for you. If you had to put a percentage chance that there will be a UFC event that takes place on Saturday, May 9th, aka UFC 249, what percentage chance are you giving it that you think it's going to happen?
One quick question. Fans or no fans?
Oh, no fans, of course.
No fans? Okay, if there's no fans, I think there's probably a 60% chance of that event happening.
And if now I have to ask, and if there's fans, what's the percentage?
0, obviously.
Okay, yeah, obviously. There's definitely no chance that there's going to be fans. But
right, that probably won't be until after summer, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're giving it 60%. Okay, I think that's pretty good. For those that don't know, again, we're recording this on Tuesday night, released on Wednesday. Hopefully 249 doesn't fall through in the next 24 hours like it did when we originally made episode 61. But as you guys know, Florida has declared sports as an essential business, so that may play a positive factor in 249 happening. Of course, the rumor is that Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje is headlining that card, followed by Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz, and Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now, Fight Geek, I want to ask you...
It's a hell of a card, though.
A hell of a card, but Fight Geek, I've got this...
And isn't Cowboy and Pettis on that card,
Cowboy and Pettis is on it, but...
Name?
I've got this final lead-up question for you, okay? True or false?
Okay.
So, true or false? And this is my opinion, and you need to say whether or not you agree with true or false. So, I think Tony Ferguson should not have accepted this fight with Justin Gaethje. I think he should have absolutely refused. And just with his record, his 12-fight winning streak, I think he should have tried to wait for the Khabib fight despite the risks of getting leapfrogged. Do you agree or disagree?
100% agree. Tony Ferguson's insane. That's why we love him. He 100% should not take this fight right now. He's on a 12-fight winning streak and on the verge of having one of the most important fights in MMA history. And he's willing to take another fight to stay busy and for the fans. So yeah, is it a great decision for Tony's career? No, it is not. But is it why we love El Kukui? Because he is the genuine article madman? 100%.
Awesome. I've got another true or false question for you. I personally think that Dominic Cruz is going to have a very rough time beating Henry Cejudo. I think it's a really rough matchup for Dominic right now in this age, in this period in his career. I don't see how he beats Henry Cejudo, frankly. Am I crazy or am I right?
I hate to kind of side with you again, but yeah, I see Dominic Cruz having a tough time off a very long layoff. He's an aging fighter against someone like Henry Cejudo, who's much closer to his prime, if not in his prime. Been more active, even though hasn't fought well over a year now, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you there. I think, although I love to see him back there, and if he has a path to victory, it's clearly, a point fight, a distance, his classic movement, staying away from Cejudo and just winning, maybe a 48-47 decision. So I do think he could possibly win, especially if Cejudo is sluggish because he's been for a long time, but don't think it's probable.
Yep, totally agree. Last fight I wanted to ask you about on that card, Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I've heard a lot of people complain that this isn't a 5-round main event, that this needs to, this is going to be a slugfest. It's going to go many, many rounds. And I just don't see it. I think that if this was a 2-round fight, it'd be finished in 2.
This fight's going to go many rounds? I haven't heard that.
Well, okay, shout out to my buddy Juice Jackson there.
Okay. Yeah, this fight is not going to go many rounds. And
Ngannou inside 1. Am I wrong?
I would probably side with you there. I think the only common opponent is Overeem. Overeem actually was beating Rozenstruik for the majority of that fight, was in full control, and then faltered one bad shot. And I think you've seen Francis able to kind of impose his will even in there versus Overeem for the most part, except for in obviously the horrible Lewis fight and Stipe fight, but of late he's definitely been able to impose his will with fighters like Kane and such. So yeah, I would take Francis Ngannou early in that one for sure.
Absolutely. And then my last little piece of news before we move on to the listener questions here. So Dana White said a few days ago that not only is he aiming for this May 9th comeback at UFC 249, which it just leaked is going to be supposedly taking place in Florida, but he hopes to have weekly events after that in the UFC Apex, perhaps, as a possibility, every single week following the May 9th event. Now, having said that, Nevada has for now banned all combat sports of any kind. So just how realistic is Dana's plan?
Well, it's obviously a fluid situation with the way things are, but I do, just kind of my opinion, and don't quote me on this, but I feel like,
You're being quoted. You're being quoted.
We've been in this situation that we're in now, for about 5-6 weeks. So I think, in another couple weeks, we're going to be about 2 months into this situation, and they're going to have made some appropriate plans to get back on track. So I do think it's plausible that he could start, if he gets that first show on the 9th to happen, it's probable that he would be able to follow it back to back to back, because that would be kind of laying the groundwork of doing them. So yeah, I do think it's possible.
Okay, very fair. I personally think it is possible, but not probable. I think that it's
certainly Dana White optimistic.
Yes,
put it that way.
Absolutely. I think it's too many cards to put together too quickly, personally. But who knows? Maybe he does something once every 2 weeks.
But I do know if it pushes another 2 weeks, they won't be able to do that because, it's just getting too backlogged.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, so with that, we're going to take a really quick break, and we will be back with listener questions. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 61, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section, and that is Listener Questions!
All right.
Little Beyonce there at the end there. No?
Hey, put a little touch on it. I get a real heavy Axl Rose vibe from you.
You know what? I'll take that over Beyonce. I'll actually take that over Beyonce. So thank you. Okay, so moving on to listener questions. This is from our good friend at JokersLL. I love JokersLL. Great guy, great account, guys. Make sure you give him a follow. He's really, really evolved and coming to his own as one of the best MMA Twitter accounts. Anyway, he says, let's say Fight Island was turned into the UFC's version of Disneyland, their own theme park / resort. What kind of things would you like to see as attractions? I'd like a Tony Ferguson obstacle course, a club where Bisping remixes Woodley's songs, and a cookout with Derek Lewis. Hashtag AskSplitPod. What do you say?
This is a great question.
Great question, Jokers. Great question.
The first thing that popped into my mind immediately was like the Fedor sweater. So I would have like one of those wooden cutouts with his sweater, so everybody could come by and put their head on it and get a picture on Fedor's body with the sweater.
Maybe the Cody Garbrandt IQ test. Maybe you got a few blocks. You just got to put them into, got a circular one, put it into the circle, triangle, put it into
what else would we have here?
We could have the double chin Uriah Faber slide where it's like one dip for the one chin and then a bigger dip for the second chin. Ooh, wow, I'm kind of just thinking of these pretty naturally here.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things you could come up with. The three that he named, the Ferguson obstacle course is obviously the best. Bisping mixing the music is obviously amazing. Trying to think what else. Who else?
I don't know. I like him. I think we've named enough.
Okay, cool.
Okay, moving on to Fighting With Myself podcast, a.k.a. Juice Jackson. What up, Juice? He says, do you agree with Amanda Nunes' decision to not fight on May 9th and instead opt for a fight in June when she can have a full training camp? Hashtag AskSplitPod. So this is interesting. For those that don't know, Amanda Nunes has now confirmed she's not fighting, of course, on May 9th, wants a full training camp. Fight Geek, what's your opinion?
My opinion is I 100% agree with Amanda Nunes to not fight on short notice with no full camp. Under these circumstances, she's in a little different situation. She's very much a legacy fighter right now. She's a champ. Every time she takes the ring, it is for history. So I think she owes it to herself and her career to have a full camp every time she steps in the octagon at this point. So I agree with her 100%.
So I agree with you, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment. Some people have said the UFC featherweight championship, Women's Featherweight Championship, has not been defended in over a year, which is, of course, true. What do you say to those people?
That is a fact, and that's another discussion. That doesn't mean she has to take a fight on 3 weeks' notice. They're two different topics in my opinion.
Well, but isn't there that understanding that champs have to defend once a year?
Well, of course, but when you consider that the division is 3 fighters deep and none of them are on a 2-fight winning streak, or maybe one of them is on a 2-fight winning streak, I don't think there's a necessity to defend that belt. I mean,
please,
yes,
Megan Anderson is the GSP of women fighters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm being such a jerk.
So my point is the demand to see her defend that belt at this point is honestly not there. So it's not like there's this dying need for her in the next 3 weeks to defend that belt out of the blue. It's only that way when Dana, wants to paint it that way for his game.
Yeah, and I honestly completely agree. Okay, so moving on to question from one of our day one OGs, Paul O'Kelly. That is at Sparks F1 at SPARKS F1.
All right, bring it on.
He says, I love this. In the last podcast, Fight Geek made some comments about sports beginning with E, aka esports. In the times we're living in now, esports at least gives a lot of people a lot of entertainment while sitting at home. So why the dislike, Fight Geek?
And first off, let me preface this by I love video games. I play video games. Video games have been keeping me lots of company lately here at home.
He's walking it back, Paul. He's walking it back,
I'm
Paul.
not walking it back. But when you start calling it sports while you're sitting at home on the couch, that's where I start to just kind of draw the line as a former athlete myself. It is very much a part of my entertainment world. It is certainly not a sport, in my opinion. Especially if you can do it at home from your couch.
All right, Vin Diesel.
Just my 2 cents.
I feel like you are driving in reverse without even looking in the rearview mirror going 70. So I'm going to call you Vin Diesel.
I thought I stood there and responded. That's the appropriate response.
All right, fair. I just wanted to say the Vin Diesel comment, to be honest. But okay,
Oh, okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I love video games and all the entertainment, but it's certainly not a sport.
Well, okay, so Paul, I agree with you. I think that esports are highly impressive. I think the people that are making money, like Ninja, all of them, they are highly impressive folks. Do I think that it's a sport? Well, probably not. But that's not an insult because I don't consider golf a sport. And people can get mad at me. Oh, how do you say golf's not a sport? It's not a sport, okay? It's an activity.
Have you ever walked 18 holes and carried clubs?
I have. I've also seen. We don't need to talk about, what is it, John Daly and how fat he is.
Your bad golf game.
Okay. Well, my golf game is terrible, by the way. I'm way too type A to be good at golf. Everyone knows that. Let's be honest. But moving on, I do think esports are impressive, Fight Geek, and I take Paul's side.
When you say they're impressive, what does impressive mean? They may
making money, making a lot of money from being good at them. That's impressive.
Okay. No, I think, there are some impressive players at the games, sure.
Okay, fair enough. So this is from one of our all-time greatest listeners. Great questions. Glitch at MMA Port. Guys, give this dude a follow. Hashtag AskSplitPod. Does Tony cutting weight twice in 1 month affect his performance against Gaethje? And will we ever see Tony versus Khabib? Fight Geek, take us away.
Tough questions. Both great questions. First, 100%. Absolutely it's going to affect Tony Ferguson. But just like my previous answer, Tony Ferguson is insane. It's the reason we love him. It's the reason he's one of my favorite fighters of all time, is because he is just that genuine article madman. Is it a good idea to get in there versus a slugger like Justin Gaethje after cutting weight twice in 30 days? Absolutely not. Do I think it'll affect his performance? Probably will affect his performance. Tony's a guy who gets hit a lot in all of his fights, and Gaethje hits hard, so that could be, a detriment for sure. Do I think we'll ever see Tony versus Khabib? Man, that's such a tough one. I want to say yes, but, back in the back of my head, I kind of think no.
Really? You kind of think no? So does that mean... Hold on, let's clarify this.
The more I think about, this question, Tony cutting weight twice, fighting Gaethje. As much as I love Tony's, getting older by the day. Gaethje's very dangerous. He's going to be confident. This is so dangerous for Tony. I mean, he could very likely get caught, lose now. He'll never get that Khabib fight if he loses now. I just firmly believe that. So it's just very risky. So risky. Unbelievably risky.
I really don't like this. Are you taking... Does this mean that you're taking Justin Gaethje in this fight?
I'm not picking Gaethje as of right now, but I mean, it's a razor-thin fight because of all of the circumstances. I don't think anyone can say otherwise.
Yeah, and, look, as a Tony Ferguson fan, I'm very nervous. I saw Gaethje, Gaethje posted an Instagram training very hard with Kamaru Usman.
And I'm, not to cut you off, but I'm always like a percentages guy. Percentages say that Tony Ferguson is due for a loss. He's won 12 in a row. So even if he were to lose, I mean, that wouldn't be that shocking. He is certainly due for a loss. That's why when he keeps winning, it's all that more impressive. So that fight's just madness, 100%. The outcome of that is going to be incredibly interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to Eduardo. That's at Landa Crew, LANDACREW. Love Eduardo. He says, is it worth having less events in order to have more stacked cards? Hashtag AskSplitPod. What do you say?
Sheesh, considering I think our last fight we saw was a Charles Oliveira victory that seems like 2 years ago, the thought of less fights hurts my heart. So more fights, not less, just more.
I have to agree. However,
I need more fights.
I agree. Eduardo, I do see what you're saying. I really do. I understand that, obviously there used to be way fewer UFC cards per year. The cards were more stacked. I totally get that. I remember that time.
They were more prestigious because they were fewer and far between, for sure.
Okay, but you just said you wanted more fight cards.
Well, that's because I haven't seen fights in, 5 weeks?
Okay. Well, in any case, I still think that it should be close to weekly. I think that's how the sport grows. I think it's okay to have lesser known fighters on some of these cards in the prelims. It's not. There's nothing wrong with us learning more
I
about
think
them.
three Saturdays out of the month is perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it has to be every week. I totally agree with that. Three weeks.
I know my wife would love to have an off weekend.
Yeah. I know my non-existent girlfriend would love for me to have a off weekend. So, oh geez, that sounded even sadder when I said it out loud. Can we cut that part out, Fikey?
Yeah, I'll edit that one out. Sure.
Okay, all right. I have a feeling you won't. But anyways, moving on. So, this is from our man, Jacob Powers, at Jacob Powers 2. What's up? This is #AskSplitPod. Who's the best wrestler? Who's the best boxer? And who's the best kickboxer? And who's the best BJJ fighter in the UFC right now? And which of those is the best skill to start an MMA career with? I love that question from Jacob. I think it's great. Should I go first
Yeah,
or you?
it's a tough question. Should we just see if we agree on all the best guys first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. Why don't I start? We'll switch up.
Sure.
So, best kickboxer's got to be Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, that's unanimous right now, I would say.
Yep. Best boxer? What say you?
Just strictly boxer. Maybe Dustin Poirier.
McGregor, Masvidal, or two others?
Yeah, I think Poirier's boxing's a little better than Masvidal's. Conor has a unique kind of style of boxing. He's more of like a one-shot guy than like a combination boxer.
I don't know. He outboxed Eddie Alvarez pretty good.
Yeah, Eddie Alvarez is a wrestler. He's not a boxer.
Sorta. Yeah.
The best jiu-jitsu fighter. Who do
Damian
you think?
Maya?
No, Charles Oliveira, all-time sub wins leader. He's more athletic. He's in his prime. I think Charles Oliveira is the best submission fighter right now.
Okay, right. We're saying right now. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, right now.
Yeah,
And
right now.
I still think Damian Maya is the better BJJ fighter in history, but right now, Charles Oliveira.
Okay. Best wrestler. Who do you got? I guess Henry Cejudo probably has to top that list, or Kamaru Usman, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to give it to Kamaru. I mean, Does
he have a gold medal?
I mean, look, dude, I was almost tempted to say Colby Covington, as much of a joke as that. I know that Colby lost to Usman.
Colby's in the top 5 for sure.
I realize Colby lost to Usman, but he didn't wrestle at all in that fight. I know that's on Colby, and that's not Usman's fault, of course. But I think what he did to Robbie Lawler, and I think Colby's one of the best.
Yeah, I do too. I'd say Kamaru, Henry Cejudo, and Colby are the top 3.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, so let's get back to boxers then, because I think there's some guys we may be missing.
Poirier's a good one. McGregor, Masvidal.
McGregor, Masvidal.
Izzy.
Yeah, obviously. So, with that being said, what do you think's the best base?
Yeah, I've wondered this for a while myself. Like, I do believe that the best base, and that's the key word, base. I believe the best base is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Because when you're in a defensive position, you're most dangerous with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, that does not mean that you become Damian Maya and you just don't learn how to strike, or you become Ben Askren and you don't learn how to strike. That does not mean that at all. Quite the opposite. But as a base, that BJJ is going to come in handy.
I disagree. I think as a base, the wrestling has to be the base as like the strength, because
I totally disagree, by the way. I totally disagree.
Well, I think that the skill sets like boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and kickboxing can be added later, which means that them being a base isn't as important as the wrestling being the base. Wrestling is not generally something you can pick up after the fact. Wrestlers are built over years and years of wrestling practice in a wrestling room, nose to nose.
You sound like Chael Sonnen. Just relax.
But it's the truth. And also, once you have that elite wrestling, you have the option of keeping the fight where you want it at all times, a la Daniel Cormier, a la John Jones, a la Henry Cejudo. We can go on forever. Guys like Chuck Liddell used to be a champion because of his takedown defense, which is a wrestling technique. So Yeah, I think it's very important. I think wrestling has to be the base because that's the one that's the hardest to make up later on, technically. Just my opinion.
Okay, I honestly will respectfully but strongly disagree with you on that. As someone who comes from a boxing Muay Thai background to then learn BJJ later on, I can tell you that
Don't try to qualify your skill set.
I still know, I still know rough wrestling takedown defense.
You've never been to wrestling practice. I'll bet money on that.
No shit, bro.
Well, then let's keep it moving because you can't make a comparison if you've never been there.
I think we need to fight. I think this needs to be settled in the octagon. Guys, can we make this happen?
A wrestling match.
How about a BJJ match? We'll do that. Okay, moving on. This is from our good friend Cyrus King, Combat Corner Show. Cyrus King's the man. He says, with Tyron Woodley hinting he could take Izzy because Stylebender is afraid of guys with power. How do you two see an Izzy versus Woodley fight going?
Falling in out of love with you. Oh, sorry.
Dun-dun-dun. Keep going.
That's my Woodley. Yeah, I think Woodley has lost his mind. I don't know what he's talking about.
Falling in and out of love is an amazing song. Are you actually dissing that song? No, I'm gonna marry my wife to that song.
I was harmonizing with that song. What do you mean dissing?
All right, well, can we let's do it right now. Falling in and love.
Let's save it.
I think we're losing all the listeners. They're turning it off. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
I think Woodley, I don't know where this came from. All of a sudden now he's talking like he's going to beat Izzy. He has other things to take care of. This might be like a way for him, some low-hanging fruit for a way for him to avoid fighting Kamaru Usman again in the future. I mean, I just don't even understand this.
Okay, can I say something controversial here? And I'm ready for the hate. People are disrespecting Woodley's power.
No, it's not that they're disrespecting
They are.
Power.
Everyone's like, Izzy would kill him. Izzy would beat the shit out of him.
No, Izzy wouldn't beat the shit out of him, but Izzy would keep it at range, stall him out, and beat him in a fight. He would probably land more offense than Wonderboy did in their stare-off.
But Woodley just needs a few right hands. He just needs a few.
Yeah, I mean, lately the guy barely even throws a few.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And honestly, I wouldn't bet on Woodley, but I do think...
The Woodley of 3 years ago, it would be a real nice matchup. The Woodley that we've seen, I mean, we haven't seen him lately, but the one we saw lose to Kamaru Usman, I mean, the questions are galore. I don't think that fighter has anything for Izzy at all.
Okay, that's fair, but let's remember, that was literally one fight. That was one loss ago.
It's a what have you done for me lately business, and that was his last performance, so I don't want to hear any of that.
All right, I don't like the disrespect that you're giving to T-Wood, and by the way...
I love T-Wood, but let's...
Chaos Theory is the best album since Mace's Harlem World. If anyone gets that joke, they're old, like me. All right, just keep it moving.
So I don't know what's going on with T-Wood, but I think the Izzy hypothetical fight is hilarious. I don't think that's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so we've now got a question from Jalen Ware. That's at strive2be _ great GR8. Love Jalen. Always brings the fire questions. He says, would it be best for the UFC to book the immediate rematch between Zhang and Joanna for the end of the year in October or November because of the pandemic? Could it headline a pay-per-view outside of Conor and do big business? #AskSplitPod. So, Jalen's asking, is Zhang versus JJ2 big enough to headline a pay-per-view that will be successful? What are your thoughts?
I do think it will be successful, and I do think that they should run it back immediately. I mean, that was one of the greatest female fights of all time. I thought that, especially with the fact that Rose never ended up fighting, I think running that fight back makes all the sense in the world now.
And do you think it's big enough to headline a pay-per-view?
Yes, I do, especially considering the show they put on prior. I think you can market that, put them both, especially with the amount of time we're going to have, put them both on some type of press tour, and I think that can be a big fight for sure.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you. I think that it's a little bit of a myth to say that women's title fights cannot headline pay-per-views. the first example that I would point people towards is UFC 207, Rousey versus Nunez. The co-main event was Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz, so not exactly a nothing fight. And I think that Rousey versus Nunez absolutely deserved to headline over that fight, as good as Garbrandt versus Cruz was. So can women's title fights headline over men's? Of course they can, and they should here in this case. So that's
especially
yeah.
with Weili Zhang and her, her following that she has, it'd be a good test to see if that's actually something that's tangible.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, so that's my 2 cents on it, is that it absolutely should. So this next question comes from Vic Dick. That's at Victorious1612. He says, I say it's time to bring back tough. Adesanya coaches a team of handpicked fighters only from Africa. Costa coaches a team of handpicked fighters from South America. Right after Corona BS is over, that happens. What do you boys think? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Personally, I really like that idea.
Yeah, who doesn't like that idea? It sounds perfect. Sign me up.
The only question I have, and forgive me if this is naive and the answer is an overwhelming yes, then please do forgive me. Are there enough top-tier fighters in Africa for Adesanya to form an elite team? I understand, of course, that there's prospects and there's perfectly good fighters, of course. But are there enough for that UFC level?
Only one way to find out, Phil.
That's very true. You know what? Sign me up right now.
Exactly.
you just sold me on the whole thing. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay. All right. So this next question oh my gosh, I'm tired. Coming from my friend Dean R. That's at DeanDawg3. That's DeanDawg3. He says, "Who's your all-time favorite fighters? Hopefully you guys haven't been asked this too many times. We need fights. Hashtag AskSplitPod." So Dean, I will start off that
How
question.
many can we name, though? Because I think we both named a few, so should we rattle off 5?
Let's keep it fun. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do 2 or 3 favorites overall, and we've got to do at least 1 or 2 favorites that are fighting right now. So, so I was introduced to this sport from World Extreme Cage Fighting as a kid, and I got into it because of Uriah Faber, and have always been a diehard Uriah Faber fan. That's the first and foremost favorite fighter. Right behind that is Daniel Cormier, DC. Went to UFC 214, famously only wearing the only DC shirt in the arena, I'm pretty sure. I walked around for a while, didn't see another DC shirt there. So Uriah Faber and Daniel Cormier are the first 2. And then as for the others, I'm a really big Tony Ferguson fan, obviously because I'm lucky enough to know him not too well, but know his family and his brother in particular, and I just love his attitude. And then after that, it's getting a little bit harder, but I really like Israel Adesanya and Francis Ngannou for different reasons, but I think they're both really good for the sport. So go ahead.
Okay, it's a good Francis Ngannou, huh?
Yeah, man, I'm a big fan.
So yeah, like you, the guy who got me into the sport was Tito Ortiz. Just was compelled by him. He was, big, crazy-looking guy, made a lot of noise, was very good early on. So Tito got me into the sport. I used to buy all of Tito's pay-per-views, literally seen every single fight of his career. So Tito's number 1. Then number 2 would definitely be Nick Diaz. I can remember watching Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler live on the undercard, and kind of Nick having no gimmicks and just kind of being this unheralded guy, and then watching him leave in the Gomi fight and Strikeforce and coming back and turning into like a cult hero. Nick Diaz will always be one of my favorites. Bisping, I think, grew on me over the course of his career. Early on, I wasn't like a huge fan of him on Tough. But over his career, somewhere around the Kung Lee fight, I started really like paying attention and following him and really turned into a huge fan. So those are kind of like my 3 mains. Obviously, I love today Tony Ferguson. Was a huge Conor McGregor fan kind of before all the drama started hitting.
As was I, admittedly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was a huge Conor McGregor fan. I'm a fan of so many different fighters, but With that said, Fedor, big time Fedor fan. Love Fedor. Consider him the greatest fighter of all time. So yeah, those are kind of the fighters.
See, okay, let me just poke the hornet's nest for 1 second because we're having a little bit of fun and this episode hasn't gone too long. Let me poke the hornet's nest here, Fight Geek. So you say Fedor is your favorite fighter. It's been proven that obviously Fedor has had many of his fights in Japan. We can agree with that, right? So
Sure.
it's widely known that an unknown but large amount of those Japanese fights were fixed and were run largely by the Yakuza. What do you have to say about that and how that affects Fedor's legacy?
Well, specifically towards Fedor's legacy, I don't necessarily think it affects it much at all.
Did he throw any fights? Did he throw a single fight, in your opinion?
Well, of course, he didn't throw any fights because he never lost in Pride, so he wouldn't have been the one throwing the fights. But
did he cooperate with a fixed outcome?
I'm just going to make my case for Fedor. You do whatever you want with it. The fights against Minotauro in his prime, the fights against Krokop in his prime, the fights against Randleman in his prime. I mean, these are the fights that made him the best fighter in the world at that time. Do I think there was any fight fixing or anybody taking a dive at any of those bouts? Absolutely not. Do I think some of the cheesy Asian wrestlers who are on the Pride undercards and, populating those cards may have been doing some works and having some shape stuff? Sure. But do I think top level? I'm not sure that it was. Because why would or some unmarketable Russian be the guy that's in there beating everybody if that was what they were controlling?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's more than fair, honestly. I don't think there's any evidence that Fedor ever was part of any fixed fights in Pride that I've seen. Guys,
and Fedor took a ton of damage in Pride, so if he was going to take a dive, he could have taken a dive in a lot of those fights. A lot of what makes Fedor the greatest fighter ever is his ability to come back from a bad situation and finish a guy.
Absolutely.
So, I don't think there's any evidence when it comes to Pride, people always bring up fight fixing and they always bring up steroids. And I don't think either apply to Fedor or his legacy personally.
Okay, fair enough.
Don't get me started, Phil.
Let's not get into steroids because that'll open a whole can of worms.
Let's just not get into the GOAT talk because people like to just act like the older generations wouldn't hang with the new guys, I feel like, and I just don't think that's accurate.
Okay, fair enough. In any case, we are now moving on to our listener question from the one and only uncle of Twitter, the legend, the Godfather, Jim Asoon. This is from Jim, and we'll be playing that very shortly.
Hope you gentlemen are doing well. Under the circumstances, I guess we're all doing about as good as we can. I'm not going to ask what the fuck you're doing because we're all doing the same fucking thing. Unless you're working. If you're working, that's off to you, and I wish I was in your fucking shoes, not mine. I'll tell you that right now. I'll never complain about fucking working 6 days a week ever again in my life. I might even work till I'm fucking 105 now, motherfuckers. Because pricks like me, we last forever, you know that, right? Anyways, that's my daily rant for you both. It's going to be the same I've asked all the other podcasts around that are doing content, which we do appreciate you all. We love that you're doing it. I kind of already know Phil's answer on this because, Phil's on Twitter a lot more than Fight Geek is. But,
yeah, I have a job.
Tony fucking Ferguson.
Shut your mouth!
Cutting that weight and making championship weight. Or almost 55.5, I can't remember what it was. I think it was championship weight. But anyways, making weight for a fight that got fucking canceled. And going to turn around and possibly do it again in 2 weeks from now. Like, if that isn't a fucking legendary freak, I don't know what the fuck is, you know what I mean? But, I don't think it was kind of too smart, you know what I mean? Kind of too smart, that was fucking pretty stupid. I'm pretty fucking wrecked right now, I'll tell you. And it's only, what are we at, 12:26 in the afternoon. Where was I going? Oh, yeah. I don't think it was too smart for him. I think it was kind of a stupid move, to be honest, to turn around and possibly cut weight again on May 8th, 2 weeks from now, roughly. It's not really the smartest thing to do, I don't think. float around that 65, 60 area. You know what I mean? For the next 2 weeks, and then next Friday or 2 Fridays from now, whatever it is, boom. I don't know. That's what I would do, but again, I'm kind of sane. I got one brain cell. Well, actually, I think the wife has it today, but I'm going to get it back on Sundays. But anyhow, that's my question for you guys. Sorry for the long rant here for whatever amount of time I'm using up here, 2.5 minutes now. Again, thank you so much for the content. Keep up the great work. We love you guys big time. And you fuckers know it's always 420. Peace.
All right. The uncle.
First of all,
Jim,
it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so don't worry about it.
Hell yeah, Jim's a man.
Okay, so I think we've touched on this a few times. Yeah, Tony Ferguson's insane. It's the reason we love him. There's no reason for him to have cut that weight and put his body through unnecessary damage.
Yeah, because he's a savage. Because he's a fucking savage, bro.
There's no reason for him to kick metal poles either, but he does that as part of his training.
Hashtag sorry for being so cool.
I mean, he's a cyborg.
Yeah, he is.
I guess we'll see, though, because I feel like, this is not a new story for Tony. I don't think the Pettis fight was a good idea. I don't think the Cowboy fight was a good idea when he took the fights. Obviously, they worked out, but I don't think they were, great career decisions, considering he had that Khabib fight waiting the whole time.
Whoa. They weren't decisions. They were both stoppages.
No, I mean career decisions as in him taking the fights when he already has a title shot owed to him.
I feel like you're Ariel Helwani because I have to tell you to let your hair down. Let your hair down. No?
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
It means to relax. I don't know. It's a Ariel Helwani term.
Am I coming on strong tonight or what?
Well, you're coming on strong against my man Tony Ferguson, the God.
What are you talking about? I'm one of the biggest fans of Tony Ferguson.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I think Jim brings up some really great points though, seriously.
Like what? That it's always 420?
Well, no, but I mean, what do you make of the fact that, what he's saying about Tony is the weight cut going to hurt him? I think it could.
I think it probably will hurt him, especially if he fights again and cuts weight twice in 30 days. I don't think there's anybody who can make the argument that will not affect him in any way.
But you still got Tony to win.
I'm leaning Tony, but who knows how I'll feel whenever I really dive into the numbers.
All right, well, guys, folks, that's going to be in the next few episodes, probably in 2 episodes, as long as the May 9th UFC 249 card stays together. I personally think Tony's going to still get through it. I think he's going to win, but
it's a fluid situation, right?
It's a fluid situation. It's a moving situation. And guys, thank you so much. We're so glad to be back. Episode 61, finally in the books. Maybe we're going to release episode 60.5 in the future, that secret lost episode. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Fight Geek, take us away, bro.
We probably won't, but go ahead.
We might. Don't ruin it, bro.
No, we won't. But okay, guys, as usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA Dude. We are at Split_podcast. It's 4 words, the Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.